First of all, congrats on your little bump.
Congrats on your little bump.
What about my bump?
You've got two nice ones.
And these
No, not bumps. The lovely lady lumps. Check it out.
working in
Everyone
digital.
wants to talk about the clothes, but I wonder if they would ask the men about the clothes.
I would.
I love Jesse's everything, you know.
Yeah, it's not just the women that have the clothes.
But
I feel like the women
Victoria-
get the conversation, but it's like
Yeah.
every detail with everybody.
But
Like,
yeah,
it's so,
it was
so
amazing.
beautiful.
Hi, besties. It's Katie Joy. Welcome back to my channel. I have some insider information today because, my goodness, there was a filing by Leslie Sloane that got people over on Reddit and just in general all upset. And then there was a ruling that got people upset about a Stephanie Jones protective order for the subpoena with Edgeworth, with the judge denying the attempts by Wayfarer to use the crime fraud exception to pierce through the attorney-client privilege, which we suspected would be likely hard to do because piercing privilege is extremely hard. And Wayfarer didn't provide a ton of evidence, and yet they still don't have the subpoena. And without a subpoena, which Stephanie Jones and Blake Lively have not provided to them, everything that they're saying is based upon out-of-court statements by Stephanie Jones's attorneys and Blake and Ryan's attorneys, who are saying that, yes, this is the subpoena that we used. This is the lawsuit that we used to get the information on this smear campaign, alleged smear campaign, but they've never told the court that. And without an in-court statement about it, the judge can't go off of out-of-court statements. So let's discuss what's going on with this chaos related to a declaration by a reporter from Daily Mail named James. I would call what Leslie Sloane is doing as gamesmanship, trying to win a PR battle in the world of the public to try to disprove these allegations about her so that her public appearance looks better, and also trying to get a PR win as it relates to the lawsuit to say, well, all of their claims against me must be frivolous, right? But this is just one aspect, and sometimes complaints do get things wrong, and this happens in every lawsuit, and that's why a complaint is a mere allegation, and that's why you go through discovery to prove the allegations that are in the complaint or disprove them. If you look at the complaint, Leslie Sloane's name is listed more than 55 times, and so her involvement is very deep inside of this amended complaint and this case that Wayfarer has against Blake, Leslie, and Ryan Reynolds. So Leslie's charge by Wayfarer is that she went so far as to propagate malicious stories portraying Baldoni as a sexual predator, a term Lively's husband also used to describe Baldoni when he called Baldoni's own agent. That's part of what she's being accused of. She's also being accused of working with Stephanie Jones to seize information from Abel's phone. And this is really the heart of the case. On information and belief, Jones, Lively, Reynolds, and Leslie Sloane and others concocted a plan whereby Jones would seize Abel's phone upon her departure and mine it for messages that, stripped of context, would be used to concoct a false narrative that the disastrous press coverage of Lively's callous and opportunist comments and the public reaction to those comments were not Lively's fault at all, but the result of a calculated smear campaign by Baldoni and his team. The Wayfarer parties are informed and believe that the Lively parties have been working in concert since at least August 21st, 2024, when Sloane boasted to Nathan that she had seen her text and that Nathan would soon be sued. Their allegation is that all of this was done with Sloane, Lively, and Reynolds to recast her as a victim because of the disastrous press campaign and all of the backlash she was getting during filming. And really, the heart of the case has to do with what they provided to the New York Times, along with what they did by getting the records from Stephanie Jones and Jen Abel's phone. And Leslie contacted Melissa Nathan on August 21st. They provided a phone record to the court that shows the call was made. And I spoke to some sources who told me that she was screamed at and yelled at. And Leslie had the text messages apparently and had seen them and was going off about how she was going to get sued. Okay. And so this was August 21st. So they knew on August 21st that Leslie had access to text messages from Jen's phone that she never should have had. That's why Leslie's being sued. And then those text messages somehow ended up in the hands of the New York Times. Text messages she never should have had before any subpoena was made, before any reason was given. She was given these text messages and then they concocted this scheme. So Leslie is aware that her case does not hinge on paragraph 193. Okay. But when a sham lawsuit was revealed by me, when we found the Van Zandt lawsuit, Leslie then tried to flip the narrative and accused Melissa Nathan and James of wiretapping and alleged that there was a three-way call that she doesn't remember being on. And so she was recorded illegally. And this is specifically why she is bothering James, because she wants to somehow prove that James and Nathan were in this sort of weird conspiracy to wiretap so that they can flip the narrative on them. But she's also accused of, with James, planting stories that had nothing to do with sexual assault or harassment, but did defame Baldoni as abusive, chauvinistic, misogynistic, taking on the role of his character, everyone in the cast hating him. She worked with the Daily Mail and other outlets in the months of August to plant negative defamatory stories about Baldoni to take the heat off of what Blake had done with the film and the backlash that was happening with her marketing campaign. And paragraph 190, shows that she continued to seed bad information that cast him in a false light and a negative light. And it was to divert attention from her tyrannical behavior on set. And she was trying to portray Baldoni as the antagonist because the whole cast didn't like him, and Blake as being the victim, and that then trying to double down and say that Stephanie Jones and that whole side is lying. The whole cast hates him. And she threatened the reporter at one point and said, like, this won't look good for you if you publish this. So Leslie Sloane was speaking with this reporter a day before, and Melissa Nathan was not. And then when that same reporter reached out to her, Leslie then lied to her and basically said, let me know how it's going. This was after Leslie was giving them false information to make Blake look like the victim. And then Sloane provided the reporter with information that significantly altered the narrative of the published story. And the publisher sought to publish a story about Blake being labeled difficult on set. After the discussion with Sloane, however, the story changed to, we have learned that Justin Baldoni caused issues on the set. Not only did Sloane breach her agreement with Nathan, but she planted a false and defamatory information about Baldoni to distract from her numerous missteps to throw Wayfarer and Baldoni on the defense. So that's part of what they're suing her for. And then they said, following the release of Lively's administrative complaint, and this is what apparently Leslie is taking issue with, on December 20th, 24, the same Daily Mail reporter informed Nathan that Sloane had lied to portray Baldoni as the foe. Yet still, Sloane escalated the false narrative by telling the reporter that Blake was sexually assaulted, an unsubstantiated accusation that not even Lively had gone so far to claim, designed to destroy Baldoni and his reputation. So this is mischaracterized 100% by them. But it is true that after this is what happened, he contacted Nathan. But Leslie is using this as the basis of the entire reason for why she's being sued, and it's not. Leslie only subpoenaed James after the Van Zandt lawsuit came out and after Jen Abel filed a counterclaim against Stephanie Jones, alleging wiretapping and violations of the Stored Communications Act and invasion of privacy, and basically using a sham subpoena and a sham lawsuit to invade her privacy and steal her records. Okay. And so once they used that, they were able to legitimize what they had extracted from Jen Abel's phone and the contents that Leslie had of these text messages. And then they provided that information to the New York Times. And that's really what the basis of this lawsuit is. And so Leslie is trying to distract that there is now, in my opinion, that there is now questions about the legitimacy of the evidence. And so now she's trying to, I believe, try to get something front on James, right? To paint it on her, like Melissa Nathan was wiretapping them. But James did contact Brian after the CRD came out. And he wrote this, and this was included in the first complaint, but it's removed now. It's not in the amended complaint. But the contents were in the first complaint, and they were in the complaint that was in the California complaint with the New York Times. And it says, Brian, it will be easier to send you the screen recording of our conversation, which I scroll through. Slowly in the conversation, you can see that Leslie bashes Melissa and tries to get me to say that Melissa was planting stories and bad-mouthing Blake. She also goes off calling Steph Jones a liar, and never once did she mention anything about the sexual harassment. Here's the screen recording. And then he said that we talked for a while, and during the conversation, Leslie asked me who it is that Melissa reps. Who is it? Who is with Tag PR? What happens with the Hell Takes situation? She told me that Melissa is not a real PR agency and that they don't have any good clients. She told me that she did not like Melissa on multiple occasions. She also told us to blank who does not work with us anymore. She also asked about Steph Jones, who she was, what she did, where she works, and who she works and who works with her. She had called her a liar too in the text messages. So he's telling them that Leslie was pretending she didn't know who Steph Jones was, which is an outright lie. Obviously, she knew who Steph Jones was. And then she was smearing Melissa to him, trying to get him to talk badly about Melissa. And then he's saying that she called Stephanie Jones a liar in the texts, and then he says she has a history of lying. This is a clear example. She gave me information on a story about blank and the real reason that he got off stage during a performance. She gave me the info. We printed the info, didn't like it. So she comes back and says the following, which turned out like what she provided wasn't true. He says many times she gives us information and then her clients get mad. And then she comes back and says that she never gave it to us and it's a lie. I had many conversations with her about Blake and never once did she say anything about sexual assault. I had a 3-way call with her and Melissa and she never said anything about it either. I hope this helps in some way. If nothing else, it shows she doesn't like Melissa and she tried numerous times to get me to say that Melissa was planting stories or that Melissa was bad-mouthing Blake. After I told her countless times it was not the case, she just kept going. Now, one of the statements that he made to Justin is what he, in his declaration, is clarifying. Okay. And he's making these statements about Leslie, about what she told him back in August versus what Leslie and Blake then told to the New York Times and how the stories completely changed and altered. And it was not even remotely the same between what he was told by Leslie in August, where there was no sexual harassment, there was none of this retaliation, none of that. And then suddenly in December, now they're accusing him of, lingering kisses and all of these uncomfortable things that are happening on the set, right? And he told them, she said the whole cast just hates Justin, and this has nothing to do with Blake. And now she's saying Blake was sexually assaulted. Why wouldn't she say anything about that then? She knows she is full of shit. She told me the whole issue was that everybody hates Justin. Nothing about Blake and Justin. She said it was nothing to do with Blake. Bullshit. So the stories that James had placed with the Daily Mail due to what Leslie told him didn't make it seem like it was just a Blake and Justin issue. They made it seem like it was a Justin and everyone issue. Like everyone hates him, to try to like take the heat off of Blake being a cause of the problems on the set. And he's not saying that Leslie told him that she was sexually assaulted. He's talking about the New York Times, which is what he clarified in his declaration. So as you can see, the way that it's being positioned by Leslie Sloane is that James lied or Wayfarer lied and how they represented what happened because of paragraph 193. And so a lot of people are assuming that James is on Leslie's side, and that side is, and that's not true. It's not true at all. Uh, James is friends with Melissa Nathan, and that's in the text messages between her and James, Leslie and James, where she's like, I know you're friends with Melissa. So he's not on Leslie's side, and this doesn't mean he's Leslie's witness. And in fact, he's not really anyone's witness. He just provided context to Wayfarer in December. And so she also said in her declaration and in her court document that he would be providing records to the court. But in his discovery responses, request for documents, when he objected, he stated he didn't have any voice recordings, he didn't have any video recordings, he didn't have any recorded calls, he didn't have anything related to the film. So his document production is very limited. And all that only communication he had with Brian were the text messages basically that were already provided in this lawsuit. It wasn't like he had an ongoing relationship with Brian. And so she's making it seem like there's like this voluminous amount of documents that he has, but he already said he doesn't have anything. So it's really just like a non-issue. It's just another way for her to claim a win in the court of public opinion. So what does this mean? Well, let me tell you what's going on. So my insider says that this is their opinion is that Leslie's doing this because she's desperate and she wants to get out of this lawsuit. And in the complaint, yes, there were aspects where apparently something was misconstrued and provided incorrectly and written in 193, right? 193 about what happened. Some people are suggesting that because it remained in the amended complaint and they didn't amend it out, that somehow that means that James didn't tell them that it was not true. And so all I can tell you is that just because something is in an amended complaint and it hasn't been corrected on record, that doesn't mean that behind the scenes there weren't conversations between James and Wayfarer or whoever, that this is not what they meant. And because discovery is not public, we don't know what's going on, right? And so a amended complaint obviously doesn't go back and correct everything, because if that were the case, Blake Lively would have to go back and correct everything that she's put out in her complaint, right? Because there's a lot of information in hers that's not accurate, which is again why a complaint is an allegation. We have to remember why a complaint is an allegation. It's not proven in court yet. So on both sides, it's allegations and not proven in court. Here's what my PR insider told me. And they have a lot of very close insight into what's going on here. So they told me and alleged that Leslie knows that Blake was not sexually harassed, and Leslie did lie to James numerous times about the cast hating Justin and claiming that the cast's anger with Justin had nothing to do with Blake. So they also say that in August of 2024, they told me this, she was speaking to numerous outlets about Justin, and she claimed he was misogynistic, chauvinistic, and failed to see Blake's point of view of the character Lily. Leslie claimed that Justin turned into his character and almost became abusive on set. That was in one of the articles that was printed by the Daily Mail. And the Daily Mail had multiple reporters, not just James, by the way, that Leslie was speaking to. So it's not just James that was part of this. All of that was false. Every story that the Daily Mail did with that in that period about this film was a planted story by Leslie. She was the source. According to my source, Leslie is the alleged source for the Daily Mail. And she framed him as abusive and the problem, which is defamation. And then the August 21st issue, I was told that Leslie, the phone call was her screaming, unruly, like going off on Melissa, and that she saw the text messages and she was going to get sued. They were saying, listen, the reason why Leslie's getting sued and she knows why she's getting sued is because Stephanie gave her those text messages and she wasn't supposed to have them. And they weren't supposed to have them because of the confidentiality agreements between Wayfarer and Stephanie Jones. And Jen Abel's phone was never supposed to be handed over to an adversarial third party, Blake Lively. She had no reason to give her that because at the time this was all going down, Stephanie was still repping Wayfarer. And they they said that Leslie never should have had any access to Jen's phone on August 21st. So she called Melissa and screamed at her about what she had seen and the text messages that she had. So it wasn't just Stephanie that had these text messages. They were given to Leslie and Blake, which is the allegation that Wayfarer has made the entire time. And they're also told me it's the fact that she then had those text messages, and then based on all of the texts they had, because they literally had all of it, they then picked and chose and took stuff out of context, and then they sold a story. And James had tried to tell Leslie that, and those texts are in the lawsuit, that there was no smear campaign and that it was Blake's behavior that was getting her backlash. And Leslie refused to listen. She wanted to make it seem like there was a smear campaign. And this whole idea that there was a smear campaign came from the ideas of Stephanie Jones and Leslie Sloane. They orchestrated this idea as a way to get out of the crap that they were in. And as far as James, they told me he didn't do anything wrong. The point of him disclosing the information to Melissa was that Leslie never said anything in August about sexual harassment. So then why in December was she including a complaint or filing a complaint about sexual harassment when all Leslie claimed was that everyone hated Justin and he was borderline abusive and chauvinistic? Why did it go from that to sexual harassment? And the PR person that I spoke to, or the PR insider, they said that Leslie's using this to discredit both James and Wayfarer, but she can't run from the fact that she isn't being sued specifically for this. It's for the disclosure of those text messages to the New York Times, and she knows it. The heart of this case isn't about statements that Leslie told the Daily Mail that Blake was sexually assaulted by Justin. The heart of this case is about the disclosure to the New York Times and how they took illegally obtained phone records and text messages that they never should have accessed and then cherry picked these records because they knew it wasn't true because they had all of the text messages. They had everything. And if you would go through all of the records, you would see nothing was planted, nothing was going on. And Leslie knows full well that she was the one that was planting stories. Jen Abel wasn't planting stories. And Leslie and Blake are trying to make it seem like there was a smear campaign. But my insider, who's been in the industry for a very long time, just reminded me of something about Leslie. Leslie's been in this game for a really long time. And back in the early 2000s, she repped Lindsay Lohan. And this was when Lindsay was spiraling and having problems with substance abuse. And Leslie consistently lied to the press about Lindsay's behavior. She lied one time that she had her appendix removed, but she was then seen out partying like a day later. She lied that Lindsay had gone through heat exhaustion, and that's why she didn't show up at set, which wasn't later was proved untrue. At one point, Lindsay's phone was hacked, or some app she was on was hacked and information came out. And literally, she went on record and they accused Paris Hilton of hacking Lindsay's phone. And this Paris Hilton hack was because Lindsay and Paris were feuding. So there was a period of time when they were accusing Paris of serious crimes. And then they later had to retract that and said, oh, yeah, no, I guess we just thought it was her. So we just assumed. But it was again to like cover for Lindsay. She got in a lot of heat for all of the lies that she spread to cover for Lindsay. She falsely accused Paris Hilton of hacking. She has lied today in the last few months and said that she never represented Harvey Weinstein, which is absolutely false. She was fired from BWR, which was the firm she worked for in 2014. When she was fired, Hollywood Reporter put out an article and she was starting her own firm and it was backed by Harvey Weinstein. She then later became Harvey's publicist along with his friend James Dolan, and they were the funders of her PR agency. There are articles that she was repping Harvey, and she gave quotes as Harvey's publicist, but today would like people to believe she was never his publicist or she wasn't backed by Harvey when she was. There are articles from back in the day about her being like aggressive and like physically aggressive with her clients, like pulling Lindsay and grabbing her on the red carpet. There are other journalists that have said that she's very threatening, and Shell and Lester said that she once accused uh, Leslie of, getting in her face after she gave a question Blake Lively, um, and about not going to rehab, and then apparently Leslie like grabbed her and said, "I'll fucking kill you for that question." There's been a lot of stuff that she was also Britney Spears's publicist back in the day, and Britney actually fired her after she leaked a story that she was like having a girl when she was pregnant, but she actually had a boy. And then information was leaked about her birth, which then Leslie then lied about at first and then corrected later on. And so Britney fired her and then rehired her and then fired her again. She's had back and forths with Lindsay Lohan. I think she might be still repping Lindsay, but Lindsay's career is very on the outs right now. And then when she was fired from BWR, clients that she had previously represented didn't go with her. So she was repping Melissa McCarthy and Megan Fox and Zoe Saldana. They did not go with her when she started her own firm. Blake Lively went with her, and I think Katie Holmes went with her, but Melissa, Megan Fox, and Zoe all stayed with BWR when the split happened. And apparently, when she was fired from BWR, it was a huge thing, and it was very acrimonious. And then that's when she was funded by Harvey Weinstein. And to this day, now she tries to lie and say she wasn't funded by him. So she worked with a man that's one of the most notorious and prolific accused producers and financiers in Hollywood of sexual harassment and assault. And more than 80 women came forward and alleged inappropriate conduct, sexual harassment, or sexual assault against Weinstein. And that was her client, and that's who funded her company. And now she's trying to paint what Justin is as a sexual harasser, and based on things that you and I would never assume to be sexual harassment. And it's just a way for her to deflect. It's no different than her lying about heat exhaustion for Lindsay Lohan and claiming that Paris Hilton hacked her phone. She just deflects and accuses people of crimes to deflect and cover up for her clients. That's been the long time pattern of hers. You can Google back in the day, she was Leslie Sloane Zelnick, and she was a notoriously inconsistent spin doctor that spun fantastical stories to try to cover up for her clients, which is what I think she's doing here today. So, my insider is clear that there is no coordination or cooperation between James and Wayfarer. That James is still very much an asset and someone helping Wayfarer. There are no documents that he has to provide. No wiretapping occurred. And it was Leslie that was the source for him for all of those negative articles. And Leslie's now trying to deflect and claim that Wayfarer got one part of it wrong. Well, good. I'm glad she got a little bit of reprieve. I'd love to see how she gets out of the New York Times story and all of the negative stories she planted framing Justin as abusive. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.